Well, hey, good evening, everyone. This is John Craig.
And this is Sandi.
And it is Tuesday, the third day of the week. It is 8 p.m. or 8:02 Central Time. We're running just a couple minutes late.
We just had to get a few things straight. And I got a call from one of the guys that we've been ministering to in prison. And so I needed to take care of that. And he is on lockdown. And when they are on lockdown, they get the chance for a phone call. It's rare. So anyway, I took care of that. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm wearing my sticker still. Did you see that? Are you wearing your sticker?
Right,
yeah, you got yours. We voted today.
Did you vote? Well, not all states had runoff.
No, we had a runoff election in District 13 of this great state of Texas.
Do we know the results of that yet?
We don't know anything yet. I haven't looked it up, but I haven't been paying attention. But why? There was a runoff. We had wasn't it like a field of 10 or 13 candidates to replace Mac Thornberry, who's been in Congress since the mid-90s.
The rest of the world doesn't care.
I know, but here's the thing about our district that we live in. It is the most conservative district in all of Texas, which so the replacement of the person to represent us in Washington needed to be the right candidate. So they had a runoff. They had it between two different people, and we wait to see what's going on.
Okay, I think they can figure that out.
There you go.
That's what it was a runoff.
All right. Hey, we have a special event that's going to be taking place this weekend on Sunday and the first day of the week. And we would love for you to join us here on the Messianic Lamb Network. And we're going to show you this video and as a promo. Here we go.
What we do in the shelter of our homes at this time reveals our focus. Are we focused on His glory?
All right, so there you go. Hearing the voice of God, that's going to be this weekend. You don't want to miss it. And by the way, this is Walking in Spirit and Truth.
On Sunday. It's going to be on Sunday.
Yeah.
First day of the week.
And who are we? This is Walking in Spirit and Truth, and this is John Craig.
And I'm Sandi.
Just wanted to make sure
here in
clear.
Amarillo, where it's been a cool 112 degrees before the heat index. Yeah, I said before the heat index.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? That's kind of warm.
It is so, it's hot. And actually at Life of Worship is where we're broadcasting right now. And of course we didn't turn on the air because I'm not going to spend the money for that. So if you see sweat beads dropping off of our head, then you understand why.
All right.
But hey, you heard me mention the prison ministry just a little bit ago. If you know or know of an inmate in the system, whether it's federal or state, who wants to pursue Yahweh, and just let them know about us, and you let us know about them. Give us their name and number, and have them drop us a note as well. And we want to begin to minister to them as well, along with the rest of them. And also, we have Sukkot coming up, Yah willing, and it is Clear Vision 2020, Yeshua the Waymaker, and that is Friday, October 2nd through Saturday, October 10th. And you want to get registered for that, you can go to www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org or email us at low@lifeofworshipamarillo.org.
Yeah.
And we will get with you, and time is ticking down. And I know it's weird because everything is so uncertain right now. Are we certainly going to have Sukkot? Yes, we are. But when you look around, at least the U.S. right now, things are up in the air because we have a presidential election coming up. And so the powers that be on the left are trying to stir everything up. Okay, we're not going there, at least not yet. I want to tell you what else is going on. At Life of Worship, we have services on Saturday, Shabbat, of course, Sabbath. And our tour study is 2 p.m. Central on Zoom. You can email us, let us know you want to be a part of that. And then our regular service is at 5 p.m. Central. And that's at Life of Worship Amarillo, our YouTube channel, Life of Worship Amarillo. Subscribe, skip the O, or type in John and Sandi Craig, Amarillo, etc. But skip the O on the word and you'll get there. And you can go back and listen to our previous, some of our previous messages and be blessed that way.
Yeah, we'd love for you to connect with us one way or another. And we are out here in the Texas Panhandle, making sure the word continues to go forth.
Yes.
So that's a great thing. Wow, a lot of things happen around here. By the way, I did see this earlier. I don't know, Sandy, but one of our local towns, about an hour away from us, was as hot there as in, what is it, Death Valley, California?
What town and what? You can't.
Borger, Texas.
Borger, Texas.
116 degrees yesterday, which matched what was going on out there in California in Death Valley, which is really,
what is up with this?
Really
okay,
hot.
We're mentioning this because this is not normal. This is not normal for the Panhandle of Texas
To get up into the triple digits,
or rarely even in up. I mean, we'll get to 101, 102, and it won't be for long periods of time, for a few days, and then go back down. Sometimes 103, 104, but never. But it's not often. We've been like this for over a week.
So it's hot. It's hot. Yep.
It's hot.
So pay attention. In other words, it's not about climate change because man making a difference in the world. No, it's not because of that. It's because of what's going on in our solar system, what's going on with our sun, and what's going on opposite the Earth. And we've talked about that, about an incoming planet. Some have called 7X, some have called X, some have called Nibiru, whatever. But guess what's happening here in the next few days, Andy? What? Today is July the 14th. I think it's somewhere around the 20th to 21st that the Earth will be on the Earth. It's going to be the Earth-facing side facing that planet that's coming in. So what's that mean? The sun, the Earth is going to be in direct alignment with that planet. And what happened last year when we came into alignment, when that planet was a little further out, is there were a lot of earthquakes. There were a lot of big earthquakes in California. The expectation is that there's going to be more, not only just California, but around the Earth. So pay attention to that. We've got 2 waves of energy coming again. We had waves of energy when we had talked about it a few weeks ago that were going to hit the Earth. They came about a day and a half late. But it wasn't just one as we expected. It ended up being 3 in a row, boom, 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 taking all that energy and throwing it into from the poles into the core of the Earth. And we've seen an uptick since then of different actions, volcanoes, earthquakes around the world.
What about the heat?
And part of it has to do with the heat. Part of it has to do with how it's affecting the electromagnetic shield around the Earth, how that affects weather. And we're having some odd weather. We were expecting a very, very hot summer. Well, that's what we're getting. Again, it's not man-made. This is all having to do with what's happening within our solar system. And by the way, when we have a solar system, it's not a singular sun. It is a binary. I think it's a binary system is what they call it, where you actually have 2 units, the sun and another unit that actually work in tandem with each other, which is what has been known of as planet 7X. So there's a lot more on that to be studied. Now there's another person that says Jupiter is the gas planet that could be the binary opposite to the sun. Whether it's that or something else, we are just paying attention and watching what's going on. So events are taking place. Stay cool.
And anything else taking place?
There's a lot going on. And all I can say is there's a lot going on.
So anything pushing further about the CV?
Well, yeah. I learned this today that the city of Austin, Texas, may be going back on a full lockdown because of their communist government city government that they have there, that they said it's either going to be announced today or maybe tomorrow that they're going to be going into a full lockdown because of a, quote, spike in cases.
But it's not a real spike in cases, folks.
It's not a real spike in cases. But here's something else I wanted to let you all know before we get into the message, and it has to do with a document that was sent out. You can look it up. You can find it out there on the internet. It's still there. It's from the Rockefeller Foundation. It was written in 2010, and the paper talks about these scenarios, and one of them is called lockstep. Now, these scenarios are 4 different scenarios. They seem to actually, when I look at it, seem to be working in tandem together. But they wrote this out in 2010, where they have one of it's called lockstep, one's called hack attack, clever together, and smart scramble. And basically what lockstep is where a world of tighter top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. That's the one scenario. Another one is hack attack. So that, in other words, in lockstep, they actually outline what it would
what they
be
want to do
to release a pandemic in the earth, which would be the common cold. And in that scenario, how it would be transferred out of Fort Detrick to Canada, stolen, sent to China to the Wuhan lab, where it would be released accidentally or on purpose.
And when was this paper from?
And this is from 2010. And the very things that they're doing in lockstep and this pretend scenario is actually the game plan that's being followed around the world.
Or better to understand, everything you're seeing now, they planned out in a document that anybody can read in 2010. That's easier to understand.
Now, the another scenario that is running parallel to the lockstep is called hack attack, where an economically unstable and shock-prone world, well, what happened when the lockdown came and lockstep came? Well, the economies of the world were affected. And it says, in which governments weaken, criminals thrive, and dangerous innovations emerge.
I want to say something. The criminals that thrive are the politicians that are seated in office, and the people that are pulling the strings.
Right.
Those are the criminals that are thriving.
And look at what's happening on our streets with the riots and the burning of businesses and the killing of white people. That's happening. Like, there's a mother of a 3-year-old. She was shot because when she
said all lives matter,
and they didn't like that. So
they just shot her.
When she came back around and she was out there walking in the park, came back around, they shot her, took her life from her. So
26. She was 26 years old, I believe.
So, smart scramble, an economically depressed world in which individuals and communities develop localized makeshift solutions to a growing set of problems, and then clever together is another one. So in other words, they have the solution. They have to bring about the takedown of the world, make the world weak, make it vulnerable, cause disruption so that they can interject and inject their solutions. But part of that has to do with the scenario of the mask. Let's talk about that for just a second. The scenario of the mask is not only that it's ineffective and it's pseudoscience, but the issue with the mask goes back to a mind control element where when one wears a mask, they lose their identity. And everybody's walking together in the lost identity. The isolation is losing identity. It causes people to lose their connections with the people in the outside world. People are unable to get together. People are kept socially distanced. That's why I hate that term, because it's what they're doing. When we're physically distant from one another, we're also being socially distant. And when those pieces come together, it is actually this is what the CIA uses. This is what China uses to control and to manipulate people with their brainwashing. So with the fake numbers, with one positive case being jacked to 15 positive cases just because a person might have infected other people, and we have all these spiking in numbers. They're all generated based on what they think might be happening, not from real numbers. Then what do you get? You get people in fear. They're panicking. The government say you have to wear a mask to go out in the heat. People can't breathe. People are breathing their carbon dioxide. They're not thinking straight. They're in lockstep with one another, and the nations of the world are in lockstep with each other to do the same type of thing in order to control a culture, cause people to be dumbed down, not thinking, and be manipulated in order to be prepared for the next step. And what's the next step, Sandy? I believe it has to do with the vaccination, a vaccination that's not built upon taking a germ and putting it in the body to build an immune system. It's by changing your DNA. You do not want to take the immunization because there is no solution to a virus. They change it. They evolve. They cannot be. You cannot have an immunization that'll actually be effective to a virus. So what do? You change a person's DNA so they're no longer human. And if they're no longer human, then what are they? Well, then they're not susceptible anymore to
I can't find my document on masks right now, but I did save something, and this is from the New England Journal of Medicine, published May 21st of 2020, and it says universal masking in hospitals in the COVID era. And it says here from the New England Journal of Medicine. This isn't from us.
From May 21st?
May 21st of 2020. We know that wearing a mask outside healthcare facility offers little, if any, protection from infection. Public health authorities define a significant exposure, and it goes on from there. But then it says, in many cases, the desire for widespread masking is a reflexive reaction to anxiety over the pandemic, and that's all it is. But I wish I really could find that, because I have a whole bunch of information on that, and it's not here. So anyway, so you keep talking.
Well, you'll probably find it after the show. It'll pop up and like, oh, there it is. So, but anyway, with these events that are going on, we just need to be aware that it is a control mechanism is what's being played out. It's a control mechanism to cause people to shift, cause people to think that they are required to be compliant. And in fact, there's what's called social shaming, that people will shame those that are not wearing masks. And you'll be shamed if you go into Walmart. Where's your mask? You need to wear a mask if you come in here. And whereas the proclamation by the governor of Texas says, well, you don't have to wear a mask if you have health issues. And of course, because of HIPAA rules, you don't have to tell them what your health issue is. But there was something else I read today that within 20 minutes of wearing a mask, that mildew begins to develop within the mask. And there's been a lot of complaints about people having sore throats, secondary infections, having sore throats. And now these people going, well, I got a sore throat. I better go get tested for COVID.
It's because you're wearing a mask.
It's because you're wearing a mask and you're breathing that bacteria back in. It's common sense. Where did we lose our common sense? And so now what are they doing? They're ramping up all these tests, and they're saying, well, you've got a sore throat. You don't test positive, but we're going to call you positive because you have a sore throat. These are the things we need to consider. But here's the other thing. When they take your sample, then they are actually categorizing your DNA into a database. And now your life no longer belongs to you. Your DNA will be categorized. They will put a patent on it, or they'll put a number on it. Somebody will own that. And when they own that, they own you. And they're going to use that. They'll use it for tracking, for tracing, and all of that. And by the way, talking about contact tracing, that is another buzzword, a new word that's come out in the 2020s. And that has to do with those that if you go down and get a test, you have to fill out a questionnaire. And that questionnaire says, where have you been? Have you gathered any large groups, any family gatherings, any church gatherings, any fellowship gatherings, any gone to the movie, gone to a restaurant? Have you been anywhere where there's been a lot of people? And you have to fill that out. And from that, then they're going to take your cell phone information, and they're going to connect it with anybody that may have been where you have been. And they're going to start calling up all those different people on their cell phones and say, you were in a place that someone that tested positive, whether it was positive or not, whether it was not a false reading or not, you were in a place where someone has tested positive for COVID, and therefore we need you to come in to be tested, or we need to see if anybody is in your household that may be vulnerable to it, anybody that's super young, comorbidities, elderly, anything like that. Maybe we need to pull them out of your household so that we can put them into a safe location. We need to do that. And you need to be on quarantine for the next 14 days.
Give them the information.
So here's the thing. And this is one of the things that's very, very sensitive, because we need to make sure we're not getting ourselves into trouble. But don't get tested, because then you won't be filling out a questionnaire. Now, here's the thing about contact tracing. anything outside of 4 days is totally ineffective, because we have all these people that are going down and they're getting these tests by the hundreds, maybe by the thousands, depending when they're going in and getting tested. By the time they can follow up with anybody, it may be 2 weeks, totally ineffective in terms of this. They should have been doing this 3 months ago at the very beginning of the COVID. Maybe it would have done some type of good. The next thing is, when you're out there and somebody's calling you saying you may have been exposed to the COVID, guess what? Be nice, be polite, because you don't want to be put on anybody's radar, but avoid questions. Get off the phone as quickly as you can. I'm just telling you, you don't want to be part of the database, because they're going to connect you with another person. And by the way, and here's the other thing that's happening in the state of Texas, I think is probably happening in other states. Many employers are falling in lockstep with what the government wants them to do, what the National Health Institute and the WHO, and that is that they want everyone tested before they go back to work. You may be part of that. That they'll say, well, you can't come back to work unless you've been tested. That is problematic. It's also a violation of your constitutional rights. And so, because they're going to say, well, you can have your opinion, but you cannot work unless you're tested. These are also things that we need to consider and be on top of. So, folks, let's use our heads. Let's use our imaginations. Let's pray. Let's pray that we stay under the radar, and that we can continue to live and do the things that the Father's called us to do during these days, because these are just the preliminaries to what is going to be happening later in the fall, and that towards the end of the year, when this supposed vaccination is going to be released, and we shall see what happens from there. That's all I have to say about all that. A lot of details, but
you told me you had nothing to say. You just took 25 minutes.
Well, all right. So we've got some interesting things to talk about tonight.
Do we?
Yeah.
I think what you're saying. Yeah, anyway. All right. What have we been talking about is worship. And last week we were talking about being enthroned in God inhabiting our praises. And I want to look at it from some other angles today. Remember, being enthroned in your praises. What does that do? Just as a review, it is the power of praise and worship. It can shake the foundation of what you're going through, because it's warfare, but it's also seating God in his rightful place. It is powerful. It is letting him reign upon you. It is setting captives free, because that's what happens when he reigns, and a whole bunch of stuff. You need to go listen to the last couple programs. But today I want to look at it from a different perspective, and I'm going to give you some versions. And I think I gave you these last week, but I'm going to give them one more time, of Psalm 22, verse 3. First off, why don't we start with your version first?
All right. So Psalm 22, verse 3.
Right.
I'll get over there. Getting there. One page at a time. Sometimes it feels that way. Psalms 22, verse 3. Yet thou art holy, O thou who art enthroned upon the praises of Israel.
All right. Psalm 22:3 in the KJV says, but thou art holy, O thou that inhabits the praises of Israel. The NIV says, you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are the praise of Israel. Douay says, but thou dwellest in the holy place, the praise of Israel. And Young says, and thou art holy, sitting, the praise of Israel. Now, I have a question to ask. If he's enthroned in our praises, does that mean that he's not with us the rest of the time? No. Because what does the word say? He will never leave you or forsake us. You.
So let's put some things in perspective, considering the time of year that we're talking about, because I think this is
when
really
I
important.
talk about enthronement here in a minute.
No.
Okay.
No. So I had a conversation with a gentleman on Shabbat, considering the this time of the year where we're in what is called the dire straits. And the dire straits is the time period that leads up to the 9th of Av, which of course is the anniversary of the day that the spies came back and they gave a bad report. It's the day that the first temple and the second temple were destroyed. It's a day of commemoration and mourning. And this time of year where it is the hot, it's the sultry time of year. It is the time where it's like, oh, we can't wait till fall. This is the time of year where we want to make sure that we're staying strong in our walk with the Lord. This is where we stay focused. We don't give up. We don't feel like, we might even feel like, oh God, where are you? But remember what Sandy just said. The promise of the word is that he will never leave us or forsake us. And even in the time of the dire straits, he is still with us. And what do you do when you don't feel his presence during this time? You keep pressing on. He is here, and you press in. Exactly.
All right. And that's a good way to say it, because when we say, oh Father, come be with me, we're praying for something we already have. He is with us. And when we can't feel him, then we need to press in. We need to change our position. We need to get on our face. But I want us to look at these translations and see if there's something that we're missing that's coded in there, because there's a big dispute over the proper syntax. Is he inhabited? Is he sitting? What's going on here? Now, remember, I'm taking this verse and looking at it from a different angle. And I believe what I spoke last week is correct. But could this also be correct? Absolutely. Because there's so many layers. So let's talk about it. Does Yahweh inhabit the praises of his people? Because in postmodern translations are going to carry the idea that it is not God who inhabits the praises of his people, but that he is the praises of his people in sort of modern syntax, modern translations. But people quote this verse all the time. Do we really understand the gravity of what it's saying? Because it doesn't really say his people. What does it say? Israel. He inhabits the praises of Israel. What do you think the difference is? God inhabits the praises of his people. Well, his people are Israel, because Yeshua's come back for what?
Israel.
For Israel, to save the lost tribes of Israel. The two sticks coming together as one. So his people, I guess you could say it's sort of the same thing, but in general, when people speak that verse, they don't understand their position in the kingdom. Are you as part of Israel? And no, we're not talking about replacing Israel. We're not talking about that. But remember, we're grafted in. Whether we're blood, whether we're not blood, I believe everybody has to be grafted in, because we all sinned. It says that Judah's sin was much greater than Israel's sin. So, we all sinned. We all sin and fall short of the glory of Yahweh. So we need to understand, it doesn't say his people, it says Israel. And it's really important, because this gives us the context of what's going on here. David is in the midst of this national crisis in this psalm. He's calling out to Yahweh, and the nations are basically laughing at him for trusting God rather than the arm of might, the arm of flesh. What? You think God is going to save you? What is your spiritual might? What is that? What kind of force or strength do you have? That's where it really is at. Well, isn't that what we look at today? Don't we say, Father, I see all of these foes outside my door. Look how many are against me. Because we fail to see it through spiritual eyes. He wants us to understand that he inhabits our praises, that he's enthroned in our praises. And that's a really important statement. And we're going to get there. But let's not lose sight that the passages are also prophetic of Yeshua's second coming. So there's a context that happened, but what happens to the fathers happens to the sons. So we need to remember that Yeshua is also the praise of Israel. He is the one we praise, yet he is the praise. How can we be both? Yes. Right?
Yes.
So if we don't lose sight of the fact that these passages have a meaning for the context of the time, but they even have and a Israel, but they also have context for you and for me. When David is saying God sits or he's enthroned in Israel, it's a reference also to the temple. Now, I want you to understand, in David's day, it was a tabernacle, right? It had his son is the one that constructed the physical building. But it says, if you could find the scripture about the third temple.
That's putting me on the spot there.
Well, I'm going to be talking. I'm going to be talking for a minute, and it's okay. But we also know that we are the temple. Okay. We see in scripture where it says it's the next temple to be built is not going to have the walls like and things like it was before, but it's going to look different. We are the temple. So as you've heard me say before, if we are the ones carrying the light, Yeshua is carrying the light, but so are we. We are also then we're like the ark. We're a living ark that's moving, carrying his presence to and fro, and that's supposed to change the environment around us, because the earth and creation is waiting and crying out for us to walk in the authority of Yeshua, walk in our own identity, and change the environment around us wherever we go. Why? Because we are carriers of his presence, because we are the temple. And next, I want us to, if you understand that, so we have a physical temple that was not yet constructed during David's time, but if we think about that, he has, he's referring to this temple. The word sit is actually yasав, and it means to inhabit. Okay, here we get that word inhabit. Sit, inhabit. Settle, sit. It's actually a Semitic root. It's a picture of a place where a king would sit to delegate. He would delegate his power, his will, and his knowledge to rule. All right? The Bible is really clear. Scripture is clear that Yahweh is omnipotent. He's omnipresent. He's omniscient. He's everywhere. But Israel was a place where his Shekinah rested, at least at the time. Where does his Shekinah rest right now? Can it only happen there in that place? When we get a temple, if there's a physical construct? Absolutely not. Because again, if we are the ones that are carrying the light, if we are the ones that carry his presence, then his glory can rest on us. Of course, we've got to position ourselves, correctly, et cetera, but our bodies are the temple of Yahweh. And if you've got that also, Mark, have you found what I wanted?
I hope so.
What are you in? It should be
Revelation.
No, it should be Ezekiel.
I have Ezekiel as well. Okay.
We'll read both of them. We'll see.
Ezekiel has 3 chapters worth.
No, I didn't want 3 chapters. Anyway, well, did you find anything specific for me? I know I did put you on the spot. Well, because I know we've talked about it before, but it is on the spot.
Yeah, so. Yeah.
If not, we'll go on.
Specifically in Ezekiel chapter 40, 41, 42 is where it talks about measuring out that, and then also in Revelation chapter 11, it's also about measuring out the temple.
That's not what I wanted, though. I wanted where he talked about how the third temple what it will be. The next temple will not be, anyway. So let's go to, what did I say? 1 Corinthians 3:16. First Corinthians 3:16.
Okay, so it has here, do you not know that you are a temple of God, but the Spirit of God, and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? Sorry, my eyes were not reading that correctly. So you're the temple. We're the temple.
Well, and that's what we were saying. We are the temple, and there's more in the word, not just that. But for now, that's what we're going to take. Now, if we look at the start, does it start with Yahweh is holy, the Lord is holy? No. Okay. So when we look at the verse about Yahweh inhabiting our praise, we are talking about him being holy. And what is the word for holy in Hebrew? It is Kadesh, okay? We all know that word, Kadesh. It means to be separate and sacred. Do you want to know something else? It's also the word for prostitute, a sacred prostitute, not just any prostitute. And it is also one that is devoted to prostitution in honor of idols. Rahab was supposed to be that kind of prostitute because she was dedicated to the idol, so that men who had a sexual relationship with her hoped to win favor with that goddess right there. And so we see this passage is Messianic, a reference to Yeshua. We have a picture of Yeshua being holy, not anything about the temple prostitute. Not okay. I'm just letting you know that part also. Remember, every word can have a contronym. So one good side, bad side. Anyway, Yeshua dwells within us and he becomes our praise. Yet our praise, if he becomes our praise, yet in our act, he, that means a noun, but yet in our action, a verb, we begin to give him praise. It almost is like the cyclical thing. What we give up and then he comes back down, and then we give him, it's this cycle of him pouring out upon us as we give unto him. And it's a beautiful picture. And again, that's why we see so much happening when you come together and our voices become one and our hearts begin to beat as one, because our voices are being raised in prayer and worship as one. And then we see the manifestation of his shock and awe in the lives of the people around us where we gather. Why? Because it's that cyclical thing. It's like rain coming from heaven. Everything that goes up, precipitation goes up into the clouds. It evaporates. It fills the clouds up till they get full and they begin to rain down. Now, does that mean that we're manipulating God? No, because our praise and worship and that sacrifice is supposed to be the overflow of the love that we have for him. It's not an act of rote or mechanical act. It's out of the overflow of our heart. And out of the overflow of our heart, he has the overflow of all he is, and it's poured down upon us. So he is the praise. He inhabits the praise. He is the praise. When we sing hallelujah, we're saying, Yahweh, shine in us. Let the world see you and not us. But when Yeshua dwells, if he becomes our praise, the word for praise here is halal, which means what? To shine. So hallelujah, shine on us. So Yahweh, inhabit the praises of his people. But it also means that God in his light and his power is in us as we're walking, as we are bringing forth the light to everyone else, and we're taking dominion and we're going places and causing the lame to walk, the blind to see, the deaf to hear, we're the lepers becoming clean, and you raising the dead. And there's so many things that we are supposed to do. That is our commission. But yet it's happening as he's enthroned. And I think next week I want to talk about enthronement and go into the ancient Near East of what we understand enthronement to be. And especially it's really sort of apropos because we're about to come on to the season of the enthronement of the king. But
which follows the dire straits. When we feel so distant from him, then what comes next? It's that the king is in the field.
The king is in the field.
He comes from his palace, from his royal palace, and he comes to where the people dwell. So stay tuned for next week on that, because I think that's the direction we'll probably go. But part of the enthronement ceremony, guess what? It is psalm singing and praise. It's worship. So just keep that in mind as we continue. Now, I want to look at this from another angle. And does Yahweh want the company of his people? Absolutely.
Is Yahweh even interested in whether or not someone knows or hungers for his companionship?
Yeah. Yeah.
He desires to be with us. Why would we pay attention, to all these other things when he's sitting there waiting for us to commune and have fellowship with him?
Yeah.
Why do we do that? Well, again, Psalm 22 is this lament from David, and he is expressing in the midst of these trials and tribulation where his nation, as he is sitting as the king himself, or why all those who are against him anyway, where is he at? He's crying out, okay? But he expresses his trust in Yah, even though he seems like I feels like I've been rejected by you. Have you ever felt that? Feels like I've been rejected by you. Where are you now? Remember what we said earlier in the broadcast. He said he will never leave you nor forsake you.
I think that's really important for us to keep in mind too, because a lot of times people feel, well, I must have done something wrong. I don't feel his presence right now. But there are times that what we feel, whether we feel that he's distant from us, it doesn't mean that his location has changed. It's but sometimes what he does is there's a withdrawing of that feeling because there's things that he's causing us to need to press in on and press through with, especially like during the times of the dire straits. You press in. You don't separate yourself from him. You keep pushing in. You get closer, and you find out what his heart is and what his heartbeat is in the midst of where it feels like like the wind isn't blowing anymore. We're stuck out here in the middle of the water. There's no currents. There's nothing. We're waiting for that wind to pick up. We're waiting for the breath of the Holy Spirit to fill our sails so we can move forward once again. But it's not a bad thing. But it's in the midst of that time that when his presence comes, how much sweeter it is. So as I was talking with one person about that, what do you do during that time where you feel like he's distant? You put one foot in front of the other. You keep going forth. You do what you know you're supposed to do. You gather together on Shabbat. You plan for the feast days. You stay in your word. You continue to love one another. You keep his commandments. You eat clean. You do the things that you're supposed to do. And because there will be a time that all of a sudden he shows up and he's outside your door, so to speak. He's right there. The king is in the field, and he's inviting you to come in to hear your heart of the things that you've just gone through so that he can extend his scepter of favor upon you. And so when you feel like the heavens are brass, if you feel like, oh, you must have messed up, we're all in the process. We have an amazing king that he is ready to wipe that miry clay off of us and steady us on the rock and give us that fresh living water where we can be refreshed and enter into his presence.
That's right. Well, I want us to back up a little bit because we've been quoting Psalm 22:3, but I want us to back up to Psalm 22:1, and y'all are familiar with this.
Well, and it reads here, this is something that we've read so many times. My God, why hast thou forsaken me?
Okay. And the Hebrew language in that is actually Eli Eli lama azabethani. Okay. And we hear that often quoted, that's what Yeshua said on the cross. But when you go into it, that is not what he said. He said Eli Eli lama sabachthani. Okay. And we know that lama means to what end and to what purpose. We've talked about that. Okay. My Yah, why have you forsaken me? This is what we see David saying in Psalm. But we also know Yeshua, when you put it together and you study out the Hebrew and understand the language that's being used in the culture and the context of the time, it is something more to listen to my heart. This is why I came to earth in the first place. This is my purpose. I'm supposed to die. It's very close to that. Or listen to my heart. This is my destiny, because it is not a direct quote. And we know that there's no error in scripture. So, and we know that there's some of this language is used in the Northern Galilean dialect that's even spoken right now. And I believe I have to look through my notes, but I believe it's in Iran, Iraq, in that area, they found a tribe that's still using it, and they still use those words for the meaning that I just said. So that's a whole nother show. I think we might have talked about for it. We've talked about it at Life of Worship. You can go on our Life of Worship Amarillo site to see that.
A community that preserved the exact language so that we could understand what Yeshua was saying when he was
from the Northern Galilean dialect.
From that Northern Galilean dialect.
But that's not why I'm going there. I'm going there for us to understand, I don't want us to cross, that's what Yeshua said, because it's not exactly what he said. Actually, the meaning's completely different. But
from what's printed in our English Bible.
Right. David is actually expressing this deep hunger for Yahweh. And he's like, you don't seem to be near me. You doesn't seem like you're listening. But as we said, is Yahweh far away? Because in verse 2, he goes on to say, oh my, why don't you read it? I'll let you read it.
Well, yeah. Finishing up in verse 1, far from my deliverance are the words of my groaning. Verse 2, oh my God, I cry by day, but thou hast not answered, and by night, but I have no rest.
I have no rest. Mine says, oh my Yah, I cry in the daytime, but thou hearest not, and the night season, and am not silent. So we know David's not without hope, because then he says in verse 3, but thou art holy, O thou that inhabits the praises of Israel, that sits. Remember, sitting means inhabiting the praises of Israel, some enthroned. There we go again with those multi-versions. So David is making this really amazing observation that the Holy One, Yahweh of Israel, inhabits the praises of his people. Okay. And so I want us to dig into the Hebrew a little bit on these phrasings and look at the Hebrew words. And let's look at the word praises, which in Hebrew is generally tehillah, which means praise, a song or a hymn of praise, a renown, fame, and glory. And so let's break that word down into a pictogram and see what it says for tehillah. And like I said, we're going to go through all the worship phrases and look into them a little bit deeper through the Hebrew language and each Hebrew letter. But let's look at tehillah right now, which starts with a what? A tav. And the tav is a picture of crossed wooden sticks. And some people say that's where you get the cross. I know you've talked about the tav many times before. Anyway, you see it. You'll even find it on archaeological places, even here in the United States, in New Mexico, I believe, on some rocks, and you just do it all over but not just here, all over. You'll see that tav symbol of the two sticks, and it means a sign. It means to seal. It means a covenant. And then you have the hay, and the hay, it's like a picture of a man with his arms raised, okay, outstretched, his hands to heaven, and it means look, and it means behold, or pay attention to what's about to follow, okay? Now, the lamed, which we know is a shepherd's staff, looks like that crook, the shepherd's staff, and it means to control or to have authority, or it's the voice of authority. And then we have that hay again, which, one more time, what is that? It looks in the paleo like a picture of a man with his arms outstretched. And again, it means to look or behold or pay attention to what's about to follow. So if we just look at the word picture from this phrase, we learn that in the tav, that praise is focused on the covenant that was established at the cross or the stake by Messiah. We can learn that the hay in itself means to look up to Yahweh or look up to Yeshua at the cross. And the lamed explains that we are to praise who? Remember, it's a shepherd's staff. We are to praise the shepherd who's in authority, because we're relating each of these letters back to praise, okay? And finally, the second hay reminds us to pay attention to what he will do. Why? Because when we see anything doubled, focus, pay attention. So what will Messiah do? David understands that what is he inhabits his praise. So what does it mean to inhabit? Well, I want us to look at the word refuge, batak. Some Hebrew people say the batak and habit are the same, and I'm not necessarily that they mean the same. Maybe they do, but in some of my studies, I haven't found that to be exact, but I will say refuge. So just understand that some say inhabit and refuge and all of those things go together. So I'm going to jump from there. And we know that Batak means a place of refuge. It's a place of safety. It's where I want to run to. You know, if I want to run to a place of safety and just be nestled in that safe place. But it also is where one who dwells, you can, when you're in safety, you're sure and you're confident of what's around you because you know you're protected. Am I correct?
That's right.
So let's look a little bit more if we examine the pictograph of this word, Batak, okay? And is it going to point to Messiah just like the word Tehillah when it's relates to praise? Well, let's check it out. So we have a bait. Everybody, we know what a bait is, right? It's a house. It's a tent. It's a picture of a tent or house. It also means the family or the dwelling place. And it's the first letter in the Torah, and that identifies the son of Yahweh. Okay? Now we have the tet, which is like a coiled snake, and it means to surround or encircle and to entwine, or even it can mean entrap. And then we have the het, and it's a picture of this fence, and it's to separate or to cut off. And it's a private place, a place where of refuge, a place of sanctuary, or an inner room. So here we find that the bait can inhabit. That means we are talking about the family, the home, the place of refuge. In the tet, we are reminded of that refuge, meaning to surround or to encircle or to include. And the het also shows us that it's about a private place, to the place of refuge, or as some say, that inhabit is a private place, a refuge or a sanctuary. So it's really amazing when you look at it like that, because if you put inhabit and a refuge together, it's this idea of surrounding and separating the house and the dwelling place and making sure it's a place of refuge. So what's, if you relate it to that context, what's David writing? He is saying a number that contains meaning. Well, if we look at Batak and we look at the numbers, Bait is number 2, Tet is 9, Het is 8. Okay, let's look at what they mean. Number 2 is the Son, who is the Word made flesh, the living Word. We look at the Tet, which is 9, and 9 is evaluation followed by judgment. And Het also is 8, and 8 we all know is what?
The number for new beginnings.
New beginnings, exactly. So when David's looking at this psalm, he might have been discouraged, but in the context of the letters and the numbers said he's surrounded. He's in a place of refuge that's going to give him comfort. Maybe it's even like the Holy One of Israel is reminding David that you've made covenant with me. I'm the shepherd who surrounds you, I surround my people Israel. I secure them in my sanctuary. I am not far away. Remember, he'll never leave us nor forsake us. And he's waiting to provide us a new beginning. All he needs for us to praise him. Why? Because it enthrones him. And again, I'm going to hit this next week. When you are enthroned, we're saying you're the authority. It's not that we're saying you're the authority and you've got this. If it's in the midst of our circumstances, you're the authority, Yahweh. You've got this. You're our refuge. You are our strength. You are our protection. You are the one who makes crooked ways straight. You, Father, are the one that is our covenant. And we look to you, Father, and we're going to pay attention to what you do. We know that he is the one that makes a way where there is no way. He is the one that fights the battles for us, but this has been given to us as a weapon. Why? Because it's powerful, because it's saying, okay, you've got this, Father. You've got this. And it's all in the Hebrew languages as we look at this. as we break it down, as we live our lives and see ourselves in the same pattern of the Psalms. I always encourage people to read the Psalms every day. Read a Psalm every day and read it until you find something that fits the situation you're in, because it's going to be there. The Psalms are through this, you're going to find something that you can identify with. But a lot of times it'd be in the very, if you just read a Psalm a day, even, you're going to find it in the very next one you read. And you break it down and you put your name in it sometimes, and it's going to meet exactly where you are. But so often you see how each Psalm starts off, there may be an issue, but at the end, it's always, but you, O Yahweh, are my strength and my song. Again, the praises begin to rise up because our focus gets off of ourselves. We position ourselves correctly, who we are and who we're supposed to be as sons and daughters of the Most High, as an army of one who under the authority of the King of Kings and Yah of Yahs. We position ourselves with our armor on, praising him so that he is enthroned and he begins to take authority over the situation we're in. Praise, inhabiting, sitting. Yeshua is our praise, but we also praise. It's cyclical. Anyway, there's a lot more to it. And I think, as I said, I think next week we're going to look at the ancient Near East culture, particularly Egypt, I believe, because Egypt's where the people of Israel came out of, and a lot of what they understood is from that point in context, but everything originated from our King. And we look at the original enthronement was in the garden. The son, Adam, was enthroned as the king by the Father, Yahweh himself. Again, there's a lot to that. So we'll talk about that next week. And we're so glad that you've joined us tonight. And we hope you've enjoyed this short teaching about worship, inhabiting, enthroned, and all of that other, a refuge in our place of safety. And please let us know what you think. And you can find out more information about us at www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org. Drop in Sukkot with us, apply or fill out your registration, and you don't want to miss that. Check out our messages that we have, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell so that you always know when we're coming on. And if you want to be part of our Torah portion studies at 2 p.m. Central on Saturdays, just drop us an email and we'll get you that link so that you can join us every Shabbat at 2 p.m. Central. And I think that's what we got right now.
All right. Good stuff. I can't get over that picture about the cycle. I just want to throw that in just real quick. The cycle.
What I said about the cycle?
Yeah, because I'm thinking about a round pool, and if the current is going, then you got some floaters or something in the pool. I'm gonna say floaters, like toys or something. Okay, let's clarify that. A
little dolphin. Emery has a little dolphin.
Yeah, there you go.
Floats.
And it's floating, and what goes around comes around. I just picture that. So if you get the current going faster, how do I just think about praise. When praise gets stronger, the current gets faster.
But it's praise, when you're in praise and you're in that river, there's ebbs and flows.
It is. And what happens is there's the favor of the Lord, because we're lifting up, but he's just wanting to pour out. And that's what I got the picture of. So there you go. Floaters. That's the word for the day. All right. Well, on behalf of Walking in Spirit of Truth, this is John Craig.
And this is Sandi.
And until next time, shalom.